read your stuff a lot. And, you know, I think you've gone through phases yourself where you were all in on training, and then you've gone all in on your business as well, you know, and I'm kind of at that crossroads. I love training, but there's times where I'm on my computer 8 to 10 hours a day, and I'm lucky if I squeeze in an hour training session in the middle of the day.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing with that, and the key takeaway that I would like all you guys to understand, is when you are in that mode of that process and you're still working with clients, you are your client now, right? So when they do say things like, man, I don't know if I have the time to train, you get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have this, and you'll do it because it's a set behavior that's so ingrained since you were 9 years old, all this other stuff, and you'll figure it out. Sometimes you might not even be able to figure it out, but most of the time you're going to be able to figure it out.
Right.
They don't have any of that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of coaches in their infancy, or as they're coming out, like, that fucking guy's got no fucking mental fortitude. They're weak, da 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 da. And it's like, well, if they have that opportunity to flip that script, then I think their ability to communicate with that client will pivot.
Yes.
It will change.
Yes.
Because now you understand,
right,
you know, where they're coming from.
And I do. And I've become a much better coach, especially the older I've gotten and the more I've focused on business, and my life doesn't solely revolve around training anymore. I mean, I love training, and I'll always...
It does, but in a different way.
In a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get it. And I understand people's lives, they're not like mine. Like, their life doesn't revolve around the gym. They don't spend all day in the gym. They have a job, they have kids, they have a career, you know, they have other things in life that, you know, take away from their time training. But at the end of the day, and this is truth, everyone will make time for what's important to them. You know, that's it.
Well, on the other side, the reason why you force it, or any of us will force it, is because if you let that go, your productivity across all other spectrums will drop.
Absolutely.
So it has to stay in there. And the thing with business that's a lot like training is probably 90% of what we do in the weight room probably doesn't yield the results we think it does.
Probably not.
You know, most of it's just a failure mess.
Right.
And that's the same in business, but it's more exposed.
Yes.
Because you see the metrics more closely.
Yes.
And you're going to fail way more.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Attest to that, because I've gone through different phases of my business. I've tried different things, and thankfully I'm kind of honing in on what really works. And I was very resistant to it, you know, for a long time, but I just got tired of, you know, beating my head against the wall and like thinking, all right, why is my business not growing? You know, maybe this approach isn't the right approach. And there's been other guys that I've looked up to, and I've seen kind of their approach, and I tried to emulate them, but that didn't work for me personally. And one thing I've also learned about business is there's many different ways to skin a cat, and what worked for one person may not work for another person.
Well, here's the interesting thing with that is we'll criticize those people that we will call program hop.
Right.
You know, they're 531 juggernaut.
Sure.
They're not working on creating, you know, a base philosophy that they're going to work from, and then figuring out how to pull and extract in from that. Same thing will happen in business.
Yes.
Right. People, instead of building their base philosophy, will see, you know, this mentor, and then boom, do everything that mentor says, and this isn't working, and then boom, jump and do everything that mentor says. Right. And it's the same thing.
They probably won't stick with any one thing long enough to actually see it through and to make it work.
Yes. And it's exactly the same thing, to where everything that you learn in training also applies, but you have to remember.
Yes.
You know, it's hard to connect the dots sometimes. It's actually, you won't connect the dots until you can look back and see.
And I've kind of connected those dots a little bit, like, just to kind of use a simple analogy. So as I mentioned earlier, I don't deviate from barbell training, because I just realized that's what really, nothing's better. You know, I don't think there's anything better than doing squats, deadlifts, bench presses, pull-ups, and that same carryover is kind of applied to business for me. What's really grown my business is just focusing on just helping maybe less people, but going deep with those people, you know, and really, really helping them, rather than just trying to build the biggest social media following and try to sell as many shitty $20 programs as I can in a month, you know, if that makes sense. My business has really changed and evolved, where I focus on helping less people, but really actually truly helping them, you know, and coaching them. And so, and content creation's become a big part of that as well. I'm sure it has for you. Because like, dude, you're a very legitimate and reputable person in this industry. And that's because I think you've probably realized what offers you the most value for your time, for your business. It's building a brand. I'm in your bathroom and you have your freaking own branded toilet paper rolls. I noticed that. Because
that was kind of like a pandemic thing, but
but either way, look where we are. Elite FTS everywhere. You've created a very, very strong brand. You're doing podcasts. You started off writing articles. You've done it. You understand what kind of helps you and grow your business. And so me, the same thing. Like, I know that my coaching business is probably what's going to help me, grow the most professionally, but obviously creating a strong brand and putting out legitimate, genuine fitness content has helped me a lot as well, because it offers you a level of legitimacy and you can build a strong reputation. And again, I'm just maybe a bit old school, but I believe in nothing but hard work, consistency, and discipline.
Yeah. I mean, the brand matters, because this is what is this, S5? This is the 5th gym, and it's not a public gym, but it's the 5th gym. I don't want to say it's a studio either, because people fucking train hard. And it's the 5th gym that we've had. And after the first one, which was just basically set up so I could do my accessory work when I was powerlifting and I used to drive into Columbus. After that first one, each one that we would go into, I would purposely lay on the floor, sit on a bench. I would go anywhere I could in the gym and then just look. Like, if somebody had a camera and took a picture, would they know where this is?
Right.
And if it was a blind spot, they didn't have something. I'm not saying the logos were all over the place, but if it wasn't something that said, hey, that's Elite FTS, then I would change it.
Yeah, they're smart.
To where it would always be seen.
I took just an Instagram story today of me squatting, and the first thing I noticed is I'm squatting right below an Elite FTS sign on your rack. And I strategically knew that you thought of that. Yeah. Because you're a smart man, you're business savvy, and you understand the power of brands. So much respect to you.
Yeah. Well, there's the interest. When you're building a personal brand, this would be a question like, why did you go with True Strength? When you're building a personal brand, it's different, right? Some people want to go with their name, right? Because it is their personal brand. I decided not to do that, because it's a company, right? And there's more people associated with that. But then when I made that decision to do that, granted, retail is what supports the content. Yes. Right. So I'm kind of like the InfoWars of the strength and conditioning field, like the Alex Jones, right? So where all the content that he'll put out, as whacked as it is supported by products that he sells. Right. If the products don't sell, then there's no content. Right. That's essentially Elite FTS in a nutshell. That's what allows the content to be put out complimentary for 27 years. Incredible. That's what keeps it. So if sales drop, then there's probably no content, because there's no business. But we're not monetizing the content. Now, on the flip side of that, so I had to be careful with where to segue back to where I was. I had to be careful of where my name would be and where the company would be. Right. And that's been a balance that's had to been played for 27 years. If it gets too big, then I got to bring in sponsors, other people to do content to kind of bring that balance out. Now, when it's a personal brand, it's different. Right. Because then the name has to be predominant. Yes. And then the name of the company would be secondary. Yes. So why did you go with True Strength?
So I went with True Strength, kind of 2 reasons, and I've taken a different approach to you. So like, I don't sell, or manufacture gym equipment or anything like that. It's more of a personal brand, and it's just something that I came up with in between doing personal training sessions, because I was sitting on my computer writing workouts, and I knew like I was destined for more, and I wanted to be something greater than just, I wasn't content being a trainer, only a trainer. And I thought to myself, man, I love being strong. And I feel like there was just different aspects of being strong. Like I said, I want to be strong. I want to have absolute strength. I want to have relative strength. And I consider myself a very strong person mentally. And so that kind of True Strength encapsulated that. And it just kind of so happened to also be my initials. So I have more of a personal brand than, maybe Elite FTS, True Strength TS, Tanner Shuck. That's kind of where it came from. And I'm not sure I think everyone does associate True Strength with Tanner Shuck, but my name, my brand, my YouTube channel is Tanner Shuck. It's probably more of a personal brand, but I've just kind of taken maybe a less, I don't know, I wouldn't call it more direct, but I've just focused more on social media and content creation rather than actually, manufacturing gym equipment and retail and selling like that. Like I don't sell any products per se.
Yeah.
The way I make a living is basically through coaching, and and the content creation has definitely helped that. But yeah, just putting out a real, honest, genuine message.
Yeah. Well, what I can say with that is the grass is always greener, right? Because a lot of people that are doing what you're doing will look and say, man, I wish I was selling, the retail type of stuff, until they see the margins.
Yeah.
It's like, well, a net margin of 2%, it's really good. And they're operating at higher margins, where the people that are doing what I'm doing will look at that and say, man, it must be fucking awesome to be able to have, those high margins, but yet there's not as much top end revenue,
right?
With the whole thing.
Yes.
So it's a mind fuck,
sure.
And it's a comparison game,
right,
that none of us really should play. The question I want to ask, though, is because a lot of coaches will be watching this, and there's online coaches and there's for real coaches. And I'm not saying the online coaches are bad, but there's the for real coaches, right? People that have been in the gym 10 hours a day, years on years on years on years. And those are the ones that should be creating more content.
Yes, sir.
Right. But it's such a foreign space, right? So when you jumped over to that, and they're all operating in the same mind space that you were when you're full for 3 years.
Right.
It's, I don't want to say they're stuck, because some people they're cool with all that. That's all they ever want. That's fine.
And that is fair.
But there's other ones that want to make that jump over to it, but get super frustrated because they'll see a lot of the people that have the biggest influence don't have the on the floor experience.
They don't have the experience, or even the presence, or even the numbers, or the physique.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So how did you deal with that obstacle?
Yeah.
Because what they do have is the knowledge on how to build that online brand.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is a big part of YouTube creators and content creators. And I look at a lot of these guys, I'm like, do these motherfuckers even train? Like, do they really even know? Like, they're excellent content creators. They can make it an incredible, engaging YouTube video that'll get a lot of watch time, and they'll have a great intro or hook to their video. They'll have great re-engagement points to their video. They say everything perfectly. It's all scripted and all done like that. But I was like, does this motherfucker even squat 300 pounds? And that's where there's a distinction between a content creator and then someone that actually is a legitimate coach and trainer. And I kind of wanted to bridge that gap. And the way I did it is I took a big risk on myself. Like I stopped training clients so I'd have time to put out fitness content. I made less money. I willingly made less money just so I could have more time in the day to just put out more fitness content, because I saw there was more potential, and a lot more room to scale, creating an online business versus just trading all my time for in-person training. That was a hard thing to do. It's scary too.
Well, how did you get out of your own way? Because that's where I see a lot of the coaches that have that problem is they get super frustrated because the first video gets 30 views. Yeah,
for sure. Consistency. Dude, if I go back and look at my first YouTube videos, they were shit, and then if I look back at creating my first, Instagram posts or my first Instagram reels, they were shit. You don't get good at creating content just by making 1 or 2 videos. Like if you look, I've made probably hundreds of YouTube videos. I've posted on Instagram thousands of times. It's just repetition. Like, dude, I wasn't squatting 500 pounds the first time I walked into a gym either, And so it's like, you basically just decide, all right, what do you hate more? This is how I think. And I'm not saying this is the right way to think, but like, what do I hate more? Do I hate my life, living in a gym, spending in a gym all day on a gym floor, trading all my time for money? Or do I hate the process of content creation and building a following? And I decided that I hated staying in the same spot, staying stuck. And I knew the only way I was going to grow is if I got out of my comfort zone. I spent less time on the gym or less time on the floor training people and just focusing on building my brand and making more content. I just had that realization, and it wasn't easy. It's not easy. And I still struggle with it, So it's not easy, but I feel like anything worthwhile is never easy. Building this facility you have here, this is, would you say this is your fifth gym, fifth facility? You've been doing this for 27, 30 years. Was that easy?
Hell no.
Hell no.
It's harder now than it's ever been.
Yeah, I'm sure. But you made a decision. All right, what do you actually want? I consider you a very successful, ambitious man, and like you've decided to take the hard path, and you didn't do what's easy. And if you want to be successful, stop doing what's easy. Do what's hard. Do what's hard today, and your life will be easier tomorrow. That's my mindset. That's my approach, and that's the way I've thought probably the past 10 years.
I don't know if I would say it will be easier tomorrow. I'll say your ability to tolerate the harder becomes better.
maybe your threshold.
Yeah, the threshold changes.
It changes.
Yeah, the threshold it has to change.
Yes.
Right, because it doesn't, then you're dead.
But at the end of the day, it's like.
But that's strength training too.
Absolutely, you got to get out of your comfort zone.
Because if you can't adapt,
right,
to the weight that's on the bar, then you're not going to be able to get stronger.
Precisely. There's really nothing easy about it. And I mean, I wouldn't consider myself, incredibly successful, online content creator or fitness trainer. But I mean, I'm proud of everything I've done, and I'm looking forward to continuing to grow and evolve. But I know the only way I'm going to do that is by doing what's hard every day and embracing the suck. I'm going to have to continue to do that. And that's the only way. So I think success is a mindset. And again, for me, this is just what's resonated with me. It's like, dude, what do I hate more? Do I hate being stuck and staying in the same place in my life, or do I hate actually getting out of my comfort zone and growing? That is how I think. Like I drove across the country to do this podcast. It is the biggest podcast I've ever been on. I'm truly honored to be sitting across the table from you right now. And it's not easy driving 14 hours in a car to be here, but I don't care. Cause like I know this is in line with my goals and the future that I want to manifest for myself. So.
Well, when I hear, what do I hate more? I'm kind of split on that, because if it's in training and you want to advance, a lot of the times what you have to do to advance is the shit that you actually hate to do. And in business it's the same way.
It's the same way.
There's a whole lot of stuff. So it's what you have this big long list of shit. We're going to go to the stuff that we like to do.
Yes.
But the most important stuff is probably at the bottom.
Absolutely.
Which is what you hate.
I think of like whatever Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule. Yeah. Like 20% of you do is what's going to yield 80% of the results. And that 20%, that's the shit that's going to suck. And that's how I think about training and business. Like, dude, no one wants to fucking get under a heavy ass bar and do heavy deep back squats. No one wants to do heavy ass deadlifts or heavy rows. That shit's hard. People don't want to do that. If you walk into most gyms, you're not going to see many people doing that because it's hard. They don't want to do it. They don't want to get out of their comfort zone. The world of business, in my opinion, is the same. And I literally had to grow up and be a lot more mature. And some of my business mentors helped me realize that. Like they just said, dude, you're not taking your business seriously. And that was a rude awakening for me, but I realized they were right, because I was like, these dudes were making way more money than I was. And I was like, why are they making more money? It's because they were doing the things that I was avoiding. And then I literally just had a hard conversation with myself. I was like, man, I got to quit being a pussy and just fucking do it. And I'm really happy I did.
Were there any topics you wanted to talk about I didn't bring up?
Honestly, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I think you can talk about nutrition, training, just mindset. I just believe in being very, very disciplined and consistent. And I feel like that's really the message that I've tried to put out to people, and just, there's no shortcuts. But really, I'm very content just sitting across the table and having this conversation. So if there's anything you want to ask me, we could speak about whatever. But I mean, in general, I feel like training could be quite simple. I think nutrition is quite simple. Happy to talk about anything you want, man, to be honest.
All right. So with the nutrition side, with clients, I'll make it even more difficult with the online clients, right? Because now you're not seeing them face to face, right? Which that had to be a change too, right? Because as soon as somebody walks in the door, you kind of know what mood they're in,
absolutely,
just from their body, language,
right?
And that's removed. So with the nutrition part, you got a very simple, I don't want to say cutthroat, but a very simple philosophy with that, It could very hard for people to comply.
And it's very opinionated, and it could be even perceived as judgmental. And I get that. And I don't try to be for everybody. And because I know I'm not, but I feel like the people that really do resonate with my message, they really resonate with it. And in regards to nutrition, I think it's very simple. Like, I kind of have a very binary perspective of food, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So to back up, you're not having the people come to you that you're going to have to convince of a lot of these things because your marketing and branding's kind of already weeded that out.
Right. And like the people that apply for coaching with me or they come to me, like they've seen my content.
So they're ready. They're ready.
They've kind of accepted the truth and the reality, and they know that if they actually want to get the results that they seek, that they're going to have to change and
okay.
have to take a different approach to what they've been doing, because what they've been doing hasn't been working for them.
Well, there's the context.
Sure.
You get what I'm saying? So
yes,
if people see your content and they see your pieces out there,
yeah,
you know, there's two things going on. One is you're speaking what you feel is your truth.
Yep.
The second is you're filtering out the people that you don't want to be your clients.
And purposely, I make controversial, polarizing content for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there'll be a reason where I start a video off with a very polarizing statement that people may love or may hate, because that's what gets views. And I mean, as much as I don't necessarily like that, but those are the games of social media that you have to play.
Well, two things are at play there, though. It's also filtering the potential client base that you're going to have.
Absolutely. Right. And I know for a fact, I mean, I'm not for everyone. I'm not going to try to help everyone, but I am going to help people that want to live in reality and that want to accept the truth and that are really ready to make a change and embrace, you know, the truth. So again, I mean, you could take that in a few different directions, whether it was training or nutrition or just overall mindset.
Yeah. So if it's nutrition, then what are the pillars there? Because you've already expressed this.
It's funny you said that, because literally every client I work with, and I put this message out on social media all the time, nutrition is incredibly simple, in my opinion. And I tell people to follow just 3 fundamental nutrition principles. And I'm fully aware, for context, these are blanket statements. These are generalizations. However, if you follow these 3 nutrition fundamentals, you will never fail, ever. And the principle number 1 is, if the food did not exist 200 years ago, do not eat it. Okay. In other words, like if your grandparents, parents didn't have access to the food or did not eat that food in their lifetime, you should not eat that either. In other words, you probably don't want to be drinking fucking Coca-Cola or eating McDonald's. Okay? That shit didn't exist 200 years ago. Humans didn't evolve eating that. And then principle number 2, it's actually the same thing as principle number 1. I'm going to say the same thing in a different way. And that is, if the food did not directly come from an animal or was not directly grown from the ground, don't eat it. In other words, prioritize high quality animal-based foods, fruits, vegetables, rice, potatoes, breads, foods that humans evolved eating. Okay. And the biggest problem with that, especially here in the United States, is we've been conditioned and brainwashed to think it's fucking normal to eat Pizza Hut, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. You know, we're inundated with advertising, marketing, commercials, you know, with, hey, come eat this food. It's everywhere. When you drive across the highway, there's food advertisements everywhere. It's like literally ingrained into our subconscious minds, you know, to think it's normal to eat low quality processed shit food. All right. And I apologize if I'm coming off as very opinionated or judgmental, but this is just the truth. All right. That's not normal. It's not normal to be fat and sick. If I'm you know, 100 years ago, humans didn't even know what the term obesity meant. There was not an obesity epidemic in the United States. No one even knew that. That really just came to be with the advent of low quality processed foods. All right. I don't mean to, I'll just get to it. And principle number 3, every time you eat, prioritize protein. Okay. So every time you sit down for a meal, ask yourself, where is the protein in this meal? And I guarantee if you follow those 3 nutrition principles, you'll never fail.